Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. 3 martinis coming up.
So glad you're with us for this historic edition of the Three Martini Lunch, Inauguration Day 2025. It is now in the books, and we'll be talking about it certainly for our first martini and even a little bit in our third martini today. Jim Garrity is away, and here in his place, Jon Gabriel, the undisputed king of stuff. He's also a columnist with the Mercatus Center as well as the Arizona Republic, and he is the author of the smash hit novel Sink the Rising Sun, a novel about submarine warfare in the Pacific in World War II. And so, Jon, congratulations on the success of the book, and thanks so much for being with us today.
Really appreciate it. Thank you for this podcast. I think was the first to mention my smashed bestseller, which for at least 10 minutes knocked Tom Clancy out of the top spot on Amazon. So
nicely done.
So I took a very quick screen grab and said, yes, I'm the greatest submarine author who's ever lived. So,
well, fantastic. You truly deserve it. I am certainly enjoying the book. I'm reading it right now, and we'll talk maybe a little bit about that in our first martini here. But we start off with the historic events that took place at noon Eastern time today in the rotunda of the United States Capitol.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God. Congratulations, Mr. President.
And there it is. Donald Trump is the 47th president of the United States. Whatever you think of John Roberts, he needs work given the oath. Remember the first time with Barack Obama, he didn't have the card with him, so he winged it, and he got it all wrong, and they had to redo it at the White House. This time, he didn't let Trump's family get in place, so it's a work in progress. He's only been Chief Justice for 20 years, but he'll eventually get it right.
Right.
And so J.D. Vance obviously sworn in as Vice President. And then, John, the president, this is literally the first lines of his speech as the new president of the United States.
The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first. Our sovereignty will be reclaimed. Our safety will be restored. The scales of justice will be rebalanced. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. And our top priority will be to create a nation that is proud, prosperous, and free.
So, John, you usually get this soaring rhetoric, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. But, 4 years ago, Joe Biden talked about how he was going to be this unifying president, and he's been anything but. So do you go for the soaring rhetoric and not really mean it, or do you just basically do a campaign speech in a more somber tone and just let the chips fall where they may, because that's what he really believes?
Yeah, it's almost like you could tell Trump just wanted to say a couple paragraphs, then clap his hands together and go, all right, roll up your sleeves. We got work to do. We have executive orders to reverse all of Biden's crazy decisions in the 11th hour. So I just view this as pretty much a workmanlike presidency in the making. There isn't a lot of the standard flourishes. The press is pretty much just doesn't know what to do because Trump frankly does not care. They're not used to being completely in this position. Usually Republicans will pay at least lip service to him. It's been less and less over the years, but it really feels like a new era. And not only when we talk politics, but in media, in tech moguls, rushing to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring, businesses just dropping DEI departments and initiative like hotcakes. It's almost like everybody is like, look, even if I don't like the guy, let's do this. We got a lot of work to do. Let's get going on it. You didn't see the massive protests / riots it just feels different. And not to say that, oh, okay, everything's going to come up roses now. Obviously, it's a lot of tough work. Public opinion will turn against him in many ways. But I think it's a good start. I think everybody's just been kind of waiting with bated breath, waiting for Biden to step off stage left appropriately and get to making America great again, Frank.
Well, Joe Biden deserves every metaphorical kick in the shins possible, as we'll discuss in our second martini. His time as president has been a disaster. His time since the election has been historically awful, and we'll get to a lot of that. Trump actually brought up the fact that he won all 7 swing states and the popular vote while standing 10 feet away from Kamala Harris. And so she's finally through this just horrific cycle of having to A, concede, B, count the electoral college vote, and then C, watch him get sworn in. But you're right about all the executive orders. That's going to happen at a rally at the basketball arena downtown, the Capital One Center. He's going to declare the border an emergency, he says. He's going to return the illegals, especially the criminal illegals. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Troops deployed to the border, designating cartels as terrorists. Drill, baby, drill. He literally said that from the podium in his inaugural address about restoring America's energy policy. He's going to end the electrical vehicle mandate. Love that. And he's also going to restore folks who were kicked out of the military for refusing the COVID shot. And he's also going to root out immediately DEI in the military. And John, I assume Benjamin Holt, the hero of your book, would not be a fan of Biden-era policies in the military.
No, not exactly. Writing the book, it's, based at the start of World War II, but that's one reason that I decided to go the self-publishing route is just no publisher is going to want this. First off, I've noticed that in World War II submarines, most dudes tended to be white dudes, and there weren't women on board, and there wasn't the latest woke initiative going on. And over time, and that's kind of one interesting thing that can develop in the books over time, is just that they started integrating African Americans, obviously, and a lot of, in that part of the Pacific, a lot of Filipinos who are just hey, our country has been taken over. Let me do whatever I can do. You just have to cover this stuff realistically instead of putting on the silly mask and making sure that a World War II war hero becomes, I don't know, he has a sidekick who is an interpretive dance instructor, female, who's from Guatemala and is a paraplegic. It's okay, but that didn't actually happen. This is getting silly at this point. So diversity is great in fiction, but it has to be realistic as well. And I think companies are saying, look, maybe we should think about our investors and the bottom line for a few years. Instead of just all these silly random initiatives and making sure I have the proper pronouns on my LinkedIn bio. I think people are just done with that whole shtick.
What executive orders are you most pumped about here?
I think the main thing is just resetting the table, reversing a lot of Biden's initiative. But I think the border, and I've seen some criticism for the right on it, declaring an emergency. My gosh, it's been an emergency for over 4 years now. And the country needs to get serious about this stuff. We see this political elites overruling the people. Seen it a lot lately the past few months in Ireland, where you just have people, all happen to be males of military age, just kind of flooding the street, protesting churches. In Germany, there was a Christmas market driven through where people were killed. We don't want that here. And if we want to prevent that, we need to take a strong, swift action to prevent it.
Yeah, and we already saw the terrorist attack in New Orleans on New Year's Day. So given the millions of people the previous administration just waved into the country with virtually no background checks whatsoever, not surprised that happened or that we may get some more attacks like that. I think the reason that your state, Arizona, went for Trump this time as opposed to 2020, and by a pretty healthy margin, and if the Republicans had been a little bit smarter in their choice of a Senate nominee, they'd have 54 Republicans probably in the U.S. Senate now as well. But the Biden era is officially over, not a second too soon, because as we'll talk about in a moment, he did plenty in his final hours here to make America understand exactly who Joe Biden really is if they didn't know already. But in the meantime, the 3 Martini Lunch today is sponsored by BetterHelp. And look, if you're dealing with mental health issues, whether it's family-related, work-related, Maybe you love the new change of administration. Maybe you hate the new change of administration. What do you want your 2025 to look like? Do you want it to be the same old situation where you're frustrated, or do you want to make a lot of progress? Well, if you're looking to make a lot of progress, maybe BetterHelp is right for you. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy affordable and convenient, and serving more than 5 million people worldwide. You can access a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties, and you can easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. Write your story this year with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/3ML to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/3ML. All right, John. Well, it was a ridiculous morning for Joe Biden as he officially exited and is now the former president of the United States. I mean, we've been mocking him for the last 72 hours just based on his unilateral declaration on Friday that the Equal Rights Amendment is the law of the land. We have 28 amendments now because Joe Biden tweeted so, even though it had a shelf life of getting ratified, needing 38 states to ratify it until 1982, didn't get there. And then a bunch of states de-ratified it. A few more ratified it way after the fact, and now Joe Biden's just declaring that it was ratified. Completely ridiculous. But that's not enough. We know he commuted a bunch of people on federal death row. He pardoned his own son. And then there were more pardons, preemptive pardons, mind you, today, including all the members of the January 6th Commission. General Mark Milley, who by his own admission was collaborating with China in the final days of the first Trump administration to prevent him from doing anything Milley disagreed with. And of course, Dr. Anthony Fauci of COVID fame. So they get preemptive pardons. Fauci's the only one who says he didn't need one, but is still grateful for it. That's an interesting thing. And I have something else to add about Anthony Fauci in a moment. Adam Kinzinger said before that he didn't want one. I don't see him today saying he doesn't want it. Liz Cheney's obviously getting it, and everybody else on that commission. And then while he's sitting down in the Capitol Rotunda for the presidential inauguration, his staff issues the release in the final moments of his presidency that Biden has preemptively pardoned 5 more members of his own family, including 2 of his brothers. I think there's a sister in there. I'm not sure exactly who everybody is, but I guess we can expect it from Joe Biden now, although it's completely unseemly. The fact that this clip that I'm about to play exists is mind-boggling. This is from December 2020. Jake Tapper talking to then President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris, although she doesn't speak in this clip, about rumors at that time that Trump may preemptively pardon people in his family. Here's what Biden said.
President Trump is reportedly considering a wave of preemptive pardons. Does this concern you? All these preemptive pardons?
Well, it concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice. You're not going to see in our administration that kind of approach to pardons, nor are you going to see in our administration the approach to making policy by tweets. It's just going to be a totally different way in which we approach the justice system.
So he did exactly the opposite with a bunch of preemptive pardons and trying to change the Constitution, failing, but trying to change the Constitution by tweet. So, John, you can't write this. You couldn't script this.
Oh, I know. And what's so maddening to a lot of people on the right, yes, we're used to it, but just how the press just went along with all this silliness, went along with this infirmities. Oh, it's not a problem. And much like Biden giving his family last-minute pardons, you've seen the media do that over this week and give themselves pardon by doing all these hit pieces, tough, speaking truth to power against Biden a day before he leaves office. And the only reason they publish these, and they're juicy and gossipy and kind of fun for that reason, but the only reason they do this is 3 years from now, we're like, well, you ignored Biden. It's like, while Biden was president, we wrote all these tough articles. It's like, yeah, the day before he left office. Yes, you did. So they're trying to clean their hands of this, and they're going to have a very tough time since there's a whole lot of video.
No, I mean, a week before the debate, they were talking about deep fakes and cheap fakes and any indication, any video of Biden wandering off or losing his train of thought. It was all, artificial intelligence or manipulation of video. How dare you say this about him? when every time the guy showed up in public, it was blatantly obvious that he was slipping big time. But in terms of what we've seen, I mean, some people are saying, wow, this was probably not smart for Joe Biden, because if he's just going to do this whole laundry list of preemptive pardons, unilaterally try to change the Constitution, do you really want to do that the day before Donald Trump becomes president of the United States? Because it's going to be a lot harder to say he's an authoritarian when Biden just did it.
Exactly. And basically, Trump can pardon anyone and everyone on earth, and nobody should blink an eye at this point. When Biden goes through with all the self-serving pardons that he did, and just bizarre, like, 9/11 attackers, and as you said, people on death row, is just like, what is going on? And you just know it's some 25-year-old intern throwing a piece of paper in front of his face and him just kind of signing it, or I don't know, maybe the intern's behind him holding his hand, signing a Joe Biden signature. He's not making all these decisions himself, but it's very, very gross.
I think the one valuable thing it does for anyone who didn't already realize this, and I hope they already did, is just to explain what kind of a person Joe Biden really is. He likes to do this persona of the Uncle Joe, the aw shucks, really cares about people, when in the end, anybody who criticizes him in the slightest gets the, what's the matter with you, Jack? And just instant attack mode. He's very petty, holds grudges, and abuses power as much as anybody in recent times. So if that's going to be his legacy, maybe there's a slight silver lining here, because yes, people who should not be given immunity from criminal prosecution got it, but it's going to be a very deep, dark stain on Joe Biden, whose presidency was already badly, badly stained.
Absolutely. And those of us who have watched most of his careers, none of us are alive to have watched his entire career. We aren't that old, but he's just always been a mean, nasty jerk. He just always has been that way. And he combines the superior attitude and need to have the final word with being incredibly unintelligent and not seeming to realize that for some reason. So, yeah, he's always been a nasty piece of work, and he's going out the same way.
See ya, Joe. We're not going to miss you. Last note on this, as I mentioned, Anthony Fauci said he didn't need it. He'd done nothing criminal, but he welcomes it anyway. And the reason he welcomes it, this is from a tweet from Jim Acosta, by the way. Fauci says the Biden White House expressed concern about the, quote, immeasurable stress, unquote, the threats we're placing on Fauci's family. John, how about the immeasurable stress that Fauci placed on all of our families, including the most egregious things like, masking toddlers and keeping 10 people at grandma's funeral, and they couldn't even sit next to each other. The restrictions and the draconian lockdowns that this guy basically forced on the country is way more stressful than anything he's been feeling with the incoming Trump administration. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's just think of the American people for a change instead of well-connected people in Washington, D.C. It's crazy.
All right, John, on to our final martini now, and this is a good martini as we take a look at where the American people stand. We know, obviously, that Donald Trump got elected in November. We found out the results, the definitive results, sooner than we thought we would. And now, when it comes to some of the issues that Trump just spoke about in his inaugural address, we're seeing numbers that are much more decisive than anything during the campaign. There was always a slight majority about deporting illegal immigrants and certainly criminal illegals. But this new poll from Ipsos and the New York Times is very eye-opening, and it shows that Trump's got a lot of wind at his back right now to do what needs to be done on these issues. 88% support deporting illegal immigrants with criminal records. 88%. 56% support deporting all illegal immigrants. On the gender issue, 79% oppose transgender athletes competing in female sports. That had been down to a bare majority not that long ago. And 71% oppose puberty blockers to minors for gender dysphoria. And I assume you can probably guess that transition surgeries would be included in people not wanting that for minors either. So, I mean, these are overwhelming numbers. And yet, while you get a few people on the left in the wake of the election going, we probably overplayed our hand on that. For the most part, the party is just blinders on like the horses, saying, no, it's just a messaging problem. We're just gonna talk about this in a more convincing way to the American people. You go right ahead and try. The American people know exactly what's happening now. They saw what happened at the border. They saw the social engineering. They couldn't be making their opinions more clear.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me just being online and seeing prominent Democrats in the DNC itself. If you just look at their feeds on X, the videos they post, what they try to amplify story-wise, it's just like they're living 3 years ago. It's just like, hey, we know the media's got our back. Well, they don't really anymore because the media, nobody listens to them. And just complaining, their big complaint this weekend was how Trump is being a quote-unquote snowflake for being sworn in indoors instead of outdoors. They did this massive week-long media push about that. I'm like, no one cares. Your supporters don't care. It's like there are real issues going on, and these cutesy gotcha games aren't going to work. You know, you better get on board with at least some of this if you guys want to have a future or perform well at all in the midterms. So they have not gotten their act together. They haven't gotten the memo that this whole kind of corporate wokeness is pretty much dead. There has been a vibe shift, as many people call it, and they better switch and start listening to someone like James Carville for a little bit if they want to regain any kind of purchase with the American people.
Or Jon Gabriel. They could listen to Jon Gabriel.
Very true. And buy my book. Several copies.
That's right.
Several copies to display. It's a very pretty cover, so it'll look great in any decor.
Yeah, so Trump's getting called a snowflake for agreeing to move the inauguration ceremony inside. First time since 1985 when it happened to Reagan. It was 25 below wind chill in 1985. Not quite that cold this year, but it is either high single digits or right around 10 degrees wind chill. What do you think the left would have said if he insisted that it stay outside? Do you think they just would have said, yeah, that's totally the right call?
They would say he's putting lives at risk. Don't you understand that, you know, half of our caucus in the House is over, 112 at this point. So you need to protect their lives. You're trying to murder them. Yeah, it doesn't matter what he does. They're going to whine. And I think most people, even, people who didn't vote for Trump, are just looking at him and going, what are you talking about? There's like big issues going on. Big changes are happening. Are you going to contribute, or are you just going to whine about these cosmetic factors that you think are big gotchas and no one cares about anymore?
We bought the ticket. We're going to ride it again for 4 years, and we'll see what happens. There will be moments where conservatives don't agree. I think a lot of us are frustrated with him trying to resurrect TikTok, especially when there's already duly passed legislation upheld by the Supreme Court. But in terms of the laundry list that he mentioned today with the border and the economy and energy and DEI and all this stuff, it's like a giant exhale from conservatives on so many different issues. So hopefully they stick to it. Hopefully his cabinet appointees do a good job. And we'll see what happens. It's not going to be an easy road given the margin, especially in the House of Representatives, but we'll see what happens. John, we will look forward to talking to you soon.
You got it. Thanks for having me on.
Jon Gabriel is the undisputed king of stuff. You don't need to swear him in. It's a lifetime appointment. There's no threat to the crown there. He is also a columnist with the Mercatus Center and the Arizona Republic. And, of course, go buy his new book, Sink the Rising Sun, a novel about submarine warfare in the Pacific during World War II. He's Jon Gabriel. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Jim Garrity will be back tomorrow. Thanks very much for listening today. Please subscribe to the podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow us all on X. He's at XJon, EXJON. Jim, of course, is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Monday. Join us again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.